Trying to decide on the e-commerce framework that best fits the needs for your business is certainly not straightforward. There's a large number of options available and each present themselves as the solution you're looking for. In reality, each option has its own pros and cons, and there's very likely to be a single option that feels like it's the best fit for what you need to achieve with your business. So today I'm going to run through some of the more popular e-commerce options you're likely to be considering, talk about some of the pros and cons, and then give an overall score. There's a bit more of a breakdown of the scoring on the associated blog post, so have a look there for a bit more detail around this. So there's primarily two different sorts of e-commerce solutions: SaaS, which is software as a service, and hosted. A SaaS solution is one where the framework is completely hosted and maintained by the company that provides it to you, and you essentially rent a store for an ongoing, often sales-based cost. A hosted solution is one where you download and install the software yourself, and there's no ongoing cost to use it, but there could be a licensing cost if the software isn't free. Typically, there's fewer technical requirements and a lower initial cost with a SaaS solution, but ongoing costs can be high and will also increase with sales. Also, there'll be reduced customization options because you don't have any access to the code base. A hosted option will have higher initial costs but lower ongoing costs, and customization options will always far exceed what you can do with a SaaS solution because you've got full access to the code base to customize exactly how you want to. So these are some general differences around SaaS versus hosted solutions to bear in mind as I look at each of these frameworks. I'm going to be looking at all of the e-commerce frameworks. We support a developer connection today, so that's Magento, it's Shopify, it's WooCommerce, it's BigCommerce, Shopware, and it's OpenCart. I'll be briefly introducing each one. I'll give some pros and cons, and then finally I'll give a score. So I'm going to start by talking about Magento. This is a hosted solution, and Magento is possibly thought of as the most popular e-commerce option at the moment. And this is probably because it's been around for so long, but also because it's recognised as being highly versatile. It's also considered by many to be on a more expensive side. The paid edition Adobe Commerce has hefty license fees and it's aimed at larger businesses, but there's also a hugely popular free edition, Magento Open Source, and this has a huge supporting a community, and this version can easily scale to enterprise level as well. Magento is the most customizable framework out there, and there are countless extensions available with new ones being developed all the time. It's also a highly capable PHP framework in its own right, and it's got well documented development procedures and practices, and that gives you really endless customization possibilities. It's got a very full set of features available out of the box, and this gives extensive e-commerce opportunities without any customization being needed. But with greater levels of customization and more features does come higher complexity, so there is a definite learning curve to Magento. When you first log into admin, there is a plethora of options available, which can seem daunting at first, but actually after some initial learning it is largely intuitive. It's also possible per login to reduce the number of options that you see, and you can use this to restrict access to just the areas of interest for each particular login. It's considered an expensive platform, and depending on the level of customization needed, it can be, but it can also have low starting costs if you use open source edition and only need out of the box functionality. The license cost for commerce, however, is high, and so is more suited to larger businesses, but with the commerce license does come considerable additional functionality, including both B2C and B2B transactions. Ongoing costs are essentially in line with what you need to spend because there aren't any ongoing SaaS related costs with a hosted option. However, development can cost more due to the complexity of the framework, and this introduces the need for a more expert developer compared to other options. It's highly capable, and with an upgrade path from free to paid editions, a Magento store will basically scale as much as you want it to. There's also a massive, very active community, and they very regularly make contributions to the code base, and this often gets included in new releases. With multiple active forums as well, there's rarely a time when asking a question doesn't get an answer. So I'm going to score Magento 27 out of 35. Next, I'm talking about Shopify. Shopify is a SaaS product with different monthly costs according to which Shopify version you use, and this also defines which features are available to you. Again, there's thousands of extensions available for Shopify, but you can't actually affect the core functionality of the store, just add to it. This means that customization is more limited to basic things like front-end theme and checkout payment options and whatever's offered by extensions. It does have a relatively basic feature set out of the box, and it relies heavily on apps to add additional functionality. But it does include all the basic e-commerce features you'd expect, but really not much beyond that. So it's straightforward to get up and running with the Shopify store. The admin panel is clear and simple, and it's not overloaded with options. Upfront costs are relatively low, and you'll probably need to spend on additional extensions to get the functionality you need, so you need to consider that. Often these extensions are not free. There's a monthly cost to using Shopify, and this continues for as long as you want to use a framework. On top of this, many extensions have ongoing costs, and this can easily amount to thousands of pounds annually. You'll also pay transaction fees for every sale you make, and this means the advertised monthly subscription cost is actually far from all you have to pay. So Shopify is pretty scalable, but just how scalable does really depend on the underlying architecture running the store, and so this also links to your subscription package. You have no control over the server, of course, that the store is running on, and you're largely at the mercy of Shopify to determine how well your store actually performs under pressure, but they will certainly aim to provide the best performance for your store. It's got a large and active community, and this means that you should be able to get answers to questions you might have quickly. It also means that extensions are plentiful and new extension releases are regular. So I'm going to score Shopify 22 out of 35. And next I'm talking about WooCommerce. So WooCommerce is a hugely popular option, and this is probably down to the low startup costs and simplicity of the software. Also the ease with which extensions can be installed and managed from the back end. Fundamentally, however, it has rather remained unchanged for many years, and this is mainly due to the fact that the same is true for the underlying WordPress framework. This does mean that it's rather fallen behind in following modern coding principles and best practices. There are a great many extensions available for WooCommerce, but out-of-the-box functionality is rather limited to just the basics. You'll certainly need extensions. Some of these are free, some of them are paid. As the underlying framework is quite basic and developer resources are also basic, there's really no way to guarantee the quality of extensions you might want to install, and also whether or not they'll actually conflict with others you've already got installed. In addition to this, there's no best practice on how to override core behaviour, so this means that you could actually compromise the upgrade path of your software just by customising it. So it's the most basic offering here. Out of the box functionality is very limited and really only suitable for the most standard of stores. Because of its simplicity, WooCommerce is very easy to learn, so it won't take you any time to get installed and up and running. Initial upfront costs are also minimal because WordPress and WooCommerce are both free products, but you should consider the very real possibility of needing a number of paid extensions to get the store to where you need it to be. Once you're up and running, there are also not really any ongoing costs with WooCommerce, and this makes the running cost for your e-commerce offering pretty minimal. It's not really a solution that's designed to scale, however, to larger stores. It's probably not going to handle larger numbers of products very well, and you'll find it hard to complete all the processes you're likely to need to run against your store's data as your business grows. WooCommerce does have a large and very active community with many people developing and releasing extensions all the time, and there's also plenty of activity on forums. So my score for WooCommerce is 23 out of 35. Next I'm going to talk about BigCommerce. BigCommerce is another SaaS solution which is in many ways similar to Shopify, but it does offer more functionality out of the box. There's large numbers of extensions available for free and to buy, but as it's a SaaS product, the same as Shopify, you can't actually change core functionality, you can just add functionality offered by extensions. So similarly, customization is limited to basic areas like theme and checkout, payment options, and whatever's you can get from extensions. BigCommerce does however come with a decent feature set out of the box, which is a bigger feature set than Shopify, and it doesn't rely too much on extensions to give the functionality you need. New functionality is also given by moving up through the packages as your store's turnover increases. It's got a straightforward admin panel, and this makes BigCommerce stores easy to get up and running with, and upfront costs are pretty minimal with all the basic functionality you're likely to need being included. Again, like Shopify, with BigCommerce the advertised monthly cost is far from all you'll have to pay. So you're very likely to have ongoing extension costs on top of your subscription cost, along with transaction fees, and this can add significantly to your running costs. BigCommerce offers good scalability, which is dependent on the underlying architecture provided to run your store on. So as your store scales up, so does your subscription cost, along with getting access to more enterprise level features. You are, however, again at the mercy of BigCommerce as to how well your store actually performs under heavy traffic. There's a decent number of people in the online community, but perhaps less than others, and this means that you might not always get a response to a question when you'd like to have it. So I'm going to score BigCommerce 22 out of 35. Next up, I'm going to talk about Shopware. This is an open source hosted solution which is much more popular in other parts of Europe than it is currently in the UK. Many consider it to be the most direct competitor to Magento, and it's got a flexible, modern code base and a vibrant and active community. There's a large number of extensions available and endless customization opportunities with custom extension development, and this makes it a really highly versatile solution, and which you can use this to tailor your store to your exact requirements. It doesn't offer everything you could possibly need out of the box, but it does have a solid feature set, and this includes everything most store owners would need, including B2B functionality. Shopware's got a simple, intuitive admin panel, and this makes it quick and easy to get up to speed and get your live store selling. So many configuration options also get preset to sensible defaults, and this means there's actually very little configuration needed in the most part. Out of the box functionality covers much of what you might need, but you should count on some development work being needed to get up and running in the form that you want. But as a framework's not as complex as something like Magento to develop, any work you do need is probably going to be pretty reasonably priced. It's probably not a solution that is designed to be as heavily modified as something like Magento can be, but this does mean that ongoing costs are likely to be lower, as development will be less complex and time consuming and therefore cheaper for you. So Shopware has a solid modern code base that follows best practices and well-defined development processes to extend and customize core behavior. This makes for a stable base to this e-commerce solution, and that makes it scalable for larger stores as well. Shopware may not be so well known in the UK just yet, but the framework is highly popular in other parts of Europe, and it's got an active, regularly contributing community alongside a proactive attitude from Shopware themselves in supporting community growth. So I'm going to rate Shopware 28 out of 35. And finally, I'll talk about OpenCart. This is a very popular, completely free, hosted e-commerce framework Now, OpenCart has a large install base and operates actually more stores than you might think, but development isn't nearly as active as other frameworks. It's typically only 2 or 3 releases each year. There's lots of extensions available for OpenCart to add new functionality, but the framework itself is fairly simplistic compared with modern PHP frameworks, and it uses a structure which has basically been long since left behind by other PHP frameworks in favour of new versions which give greater flexibility and cleaner, more structured code. It's still possible, however, to create custom extensions, giving relatively good customization possibilities, but customizing out-of-the-box functionality is pretty limited to just certain areas. OpenCart does have a good but not extensive e-commerce feature set, and much of what you'd expect out of the box is present, but it misses some features that many store owners would feel are important, for instance being able to print an invoice. It's got a simple admin panel and few options to learn, and your store should therefore be up and running pretty quickly. And being completely open source, getting up and running with OpenCart incurs pretty minimal upfront costs as well. While you may need additional extensions to get your store to the right place, there are lots of free ones, and even the paid ones have a typically very low cost of between $20 and $30. For the same reason that upfront costs are low, ongoing costs are also going to be low. Unfortunately, OpenCart doesn't really scale very well, and with a simplistic code base, relying on a solution for an enterprise level offering is probably going to create functionality and stability issues as your product order and customer count increases. There are lots of people using OpenCart, but on the support side there isn't much activity on forums, so if you do have a question for the community, you're not likely to receive a response anytime soon. So I'm going to score OpenCart 24 out of 35. To conclude, I'm not going to declare any single option the winner. That kind of depends on you and your business requirements, but hopefully this brief look at these e-commerce frameworks has given you some useful information to help you pick the right one for your business. Developers of all of these frameworks are listed with us here at Developer Connection, so come and find that developer your team is looking for at developerconnection.co.uk.